Reze vs Bakugo has produced some really funny fan art and crazy quality animations in a short period of time. And despite this matchup having a very clear favorite to win, I've seen plenty of people in these agenda wars conflate what's funny and what's true. So in this video, I'll be throwing my own hat in the ring, comparing Reze and Bakugo on the basis of their strength, speed, durability, and hacks, all in order to determine who would win and why. Anger at the results of this match are almost a foregone conclusion, so buckle up and get ready, because one side of this debate is getting absolutely hoed in this video. Starting with one of the most controversial and important aspects of this fight and agenda war at large, seems like the perfect way to kick this off, as both Reze and Bakugo's attack potency or explosive power is their bread and butter. Starting with the Bomb Devil herself, the concept of explosions, if you will, shows that with her feats in the manga, while impressive and capable of slamming pretty much every character opposing her individually, she isn't quite matching up to the force of all bombs ever conceived, contrary to a strikingly popular belief. Throughout her fight with Denji, she blows up a couple of buildings, detonates a truck, incinerates some random devil hunters, and even has one pretty impressive showing where her explosion size is comparable to buildings below her, all of which yield building-ish levels of output. For context, all of these panels on screen now are measured to have around or well below a ton of TNT in terms of strength behind them. Impressive and enough to rip Denji apart on multiple occasions, sure, but not impossibly powerful. That being said, she does have access to higher levels of strength outside of her own explosive feats though, as characters like the Bat Devil could be defeated by Denji in the beginning of the story in a one-on-one confrontation, yet Reze was obviously the more dominant fighter between the two after Denji had grown significantly stronger throughout his time as Chainsaw Man. This is important because the Bat Devil's sonic attack that Denji survives here is calculated to have an output that would put it and everyone that scales to it at city block level, or a force that yields around 100 tons of TNT. This is about the highest you can scale Reze reasonably, as she doesn't compare to the ultra high tier devils and hybrids that follow her time in the story. But as is expected of the Bomb Devil, she does exist as one of the stronger characters from the perspective of pure destructive energy. Many Reze fans are under the assumption that due to being the Bomb Devil, Reze should have complete manipulation and superiority to all bombs and explosions everywhere, but her feats just don't indicate this. I'll talk a bit more about how devils and concepts interact with one another and how that plays a part in the outcome of this battle a bit later, but just keep that city block level scaling in mind for the time being. That is, keep it in mind if you're using manga exclusive showings. Reze in the movie gets a bit of an animation buff, to say the least. And while I typically don't incorporate animation exclusive feats or demonstrations of strength that pretty directly contradict a consistent level of power shown in the manga, what Reze is capable of in the movie has been the source of a lot of the arguments shown everywhere in this agenda war, so I thought I'd take that into consideration as well. Taking her grandest, most impressive destructive feats into account, scaling off the size of the explosions relative to the buildings surrounding them, the shockwaves resulting from it, yada yada yada, Reze more than doubles what she seems to be capable of in the manga, with an explosive power of over 220 tons of TNT or multi-city block level. Some calcs really push the envelope, getting these explosions all the way to city level plus in terms of attack potency, but these rely on much more generous estimates than what seems to be the case. You can keep this in mind as an upper end ceiling for Reze in the anime, but generally I consider it a bit of a high ball. For shorthand, manga Reze equals 90 tons of TNT or city block level, anime Reze equals 220 tons of TNT or multi-city block level. One thing that's also important to note here is that Reze's durability, unlike many characters you'll see in fiction, doesn't necessarily scale to her own explosions. While she isn't always destroyed or damaged by her own attacks, whether made clear in the anime or manga, Reze can detonate herself with the power of her own explosions, and characters far below her in overall strength, like Aki, are capable of dealing damage to her, even to the extent of lopping off entire limbs. You can make the argument that she may have been somewhat off guard due to him just sneaking up, grabbing a random sword and going to work, but it's pretty consistent that characters weaker than her can damage her, as Denji too is capable of harming and slashing her despite being so outclassed in output that for the majority of the fight he's getting absolutely ragdolled. This just further lends credence to her durability not being on the same level as her strength. When trying to find that figure, the building level power of characters capable of cutting her down seems appropriate, with maybe City Block as a high end, but once again, a high end. Comparing this to Bakugo, sticking to the manga first to get an even comparison, shows us that even early on in the story, he's more than capable of matching and even surpassing what Reze's manga feats demonstrate. In the Sports Festival arc, one of the earliest portions of the story, Bakugo uses howitzer impact to destroy a massive block of ice constructed by Todoroki, and calculations for this put him at multi-city block level, or yielding an explosive force that's over 20 times more than Reze's best manga arguments allow for. Obviously, Bakugo only grows significantly in strength and quirk proficiency from here, widening the gap even further. We see that in the fight with Shigaraki, even before achieving his quirk awakening, that after a little bit of combat and his hero equipment allowing him to store sweat, Bakugo is able to create massive explosions, even capable of charring Shigaraki's body a bit. Combined with the scale that this blast is shown to be at, we can take these two factors to determine that this attack should be hitting with large island levels of force, or 114 gigatons of TNT. Even if you did believe that Reze was packing SAR Bomba level attacks in the back pocket for whatever reason but just didn't use them, Bakugo's explosions here would be thousands of times more powerful than that. Now granted, Bakugo can't let off explosions like this whenever he wants. Not only does it take a buildup of sweat and equipment to use, but it's also the strongest attack that he has in his arsenal pre-awakening. This isn't exactly an opening strike the same way his previous howitzer impact could be, so while he clearly outclasses manga Reze with no difficulty, by the story's third major arc, anime Reze would certainly leave him pressed for build-up time. Luckily for him, Bakugo shows a great deal of resilience at this point in the manga, surviving glancing physical strikes from Shigaraki, a prime all-might threat at this point in the story. While Bakugo ain't just eating island level attacks like it's breakfast, he has shown a level of resilience that even limiting him to manga showings exclusively would allow for survival against anime Reze for a bit. And for context, Reze gets cut in half or limbs lopped off by Aki and Denji, building level fighters. Bakugo nearly dies, yes, from a direct punch from Shigaraki, but that Shigaraki's as strong as All Might. The same All Might who could casually create weathers with a single punch. His body mostly holds up to that. Not a definitive statement of his overall durability and resilience, because he isn't just tanking All Might level blows, but just keep that in mind. Regardless of the sentiment, how Bakugo would last long term is a bit more dependent on his mobility and speed, which we'll talk about a bit later as well, but as it stands, anime Reze's standard attacks should scale above Bakugo's base explosions, with him surpassing manga Reze outright, and both of them if he gets sweaty enough. Now I keep harping on manga exclusive feats for Bakugo because using the anime, specifically the MHA movies, which are canon to the mainline story, just puts his base abilities in a different league altogether. Like, it's honestly kinda gross. In that regard, Bakugo completely outclasses the Bomb Devil. His howitzer impact variants in MHA World Heroes Mission are both massively powerful explosions that can get him all the way up to city level in terms of his regularly available attack potency. This means even if you go with higher end scaling for Reze's explosion in the Bomb Devil movie, she'd be going pop for pop with Bakugo, but with a significant disadvantage in the resilience department. To simplify the comparison to its barest essentials, Reze versus Bakugo purely on the basis of explosive power looks like this. Using exclusively manga comparisons, Bakugo is generally above her with his regular explosive attacks, but then becomes orders of magnitude stronger if given time to charge over the course of the fight. When comparing their anime showings, Bakugo still outclasses Reze's best displays of strength, meeting her 200 plus tons of TNT with 2 megatons of dynamite to the face. A wild physical gap, if I've ever seen one. And I'd love to say that this trend stops with speed, but if we're being honest, it only gets worse. Chainsaw Man speed scaling, if you aren't Makima, Pochita, Yoru, hell, a horseman or core fear of humanity just in general, or anyone that can throw hands with them on even footing, isn't exactly bad, but it isn't super comparable to high-end MHA characters, with Bakugo being one of them. Reze should be significantly faster than the likes of Denji, Aki, the Angel Devil, Beam, or any other opponent that she faces in that movie, putting her well above the speeds that they've shown up to this point. Most notably being Angel, who has feats showing that he can block bullets from pretty close range, placing him just under Mach 3, which isn't too inconsistent with her being able to fire off miniature explosions faster than Devil Hunters can get off a few shots on her. And I mean, that's cool or whatever, but Deku with 5% full cowling could pull off similar bullet avoidance feats. You really need to ramp things up for Reze to compare to end of series Bakugo. And you kinda can if you assume that part 2 and part 1 Katana Man are the same strength and speed as one another, because after training with Kishibe, Denji is able to react to and block Katana Man's mad dash, yet fails to stop pretty much any attack that Reze can throw at him. I'm sure her skill in martial arts contributes a bit to why she's able to outstrike him so consistently, but she also makes it clear that her usage of bombs to maneuver through combat is the real difference maker. This would place her speed well over 80 times the speed of sound, and you know, just because she's so much faster than Denji both in the movie and manga, let's just call it an even Mach 100. It still ain't enough to keep pace with Bakugo, someone who after mastering his awakening could completely blitz Shigaraki in his completed body, a rival to All Might in his prime, and the monster who could outpace Star in stripes in physical combat. In their fight, Star reacts to Shigaraki's radio wave attack, which is calced to put her at around 60% the speed of light, which I think equates to like Mach 500,000 or something. Rize's speed by comparison is a rounding error. Wow, that was crazy. I need to say all that. And before I get boomed by every Reze fan watching this, I'd just like to say that when it comes to versus style matchups like this, a character's physical abilities being inferior to their opponents doesn't necessarily mean that they'll lose. I mean, if you're familiar with other videos on the channel pitting massively more powerful universes against the likes of JJK, sometimes characters way outside of the Jujutsu Kaisen universe's weight class lose simply because they have no answer for Gojo or Infinity. Chainsaw Man is a manga rife with unique hacks and abilities. This applies to Reze as well, with the aspect of her devil powers most commonly brought up being her immortality and her supposed immunity to explosions as the bomb devil. Her immortality and capacity to regenerate even from a headless state all but guarantees that Bakugo can't kill her, which in some sense means that she can't be beat forever. The problem is that much like Denji, while Reze can't die, she can be incapacitated and damaged so severely that she won't regenerate or even be capable of conscious movement unless she's fed blood. Reze herself is actually the one that shows us the limits of this regeneration with her own explosions against Denji. While he's able to heal at first, through the use of consecutive and concentrated explosives, she's able to completely halt his regenerative ability. We also see Reze defeated through pretty basic levels of damage in the anime and manga, as she states pretty clearly that Denji revived her after she essentially died drowning, and she later goes on to kick the bucket after getting pierced through the heart. So is she immortal? Yeah, she technically can't die, but beating her is as simple as outpacing her regeneration and preventing her from consuming blood. She isn't undead Andy. The limits of her regeneration and form of immortality she possesses are both very beatable under the right circumstances. People like to reference Reze blowing her own head off and still surviving to fight, but ignore the fact that immediately after sustaining this wound, she drinks the blood of devil hunters to recuperate. If Bakugo hits her with the insanely powerful explosions that we now know he has, she could come back a few times, sure, but he isn't just gonna let her drink his or anyone else's blood to revive herself from a near-death state. Some people might consider Bakugo's inability to kill her a loss, but I don't know, man. Remaining a burnt husk for all of eternity because some angry kid slammed into you at speeds approaching that of light doesn't seem very much like a win in my book. This just leaves her immunity to explosions as the last line of defense for Reze clutching a War of Attrition W, and listen, I get it. Agenda's agenda. What's actually on the page is far less important than what you feel in your heart of hearts and what's funny. But I have to say, for all the people that actually think this, you really have no reason to. We see devils, hybrids, or fiends get harmed by their concepts plenty of times in the story. I mean, we literally see Reze detonate her own head, so she's clearly not invulnerable to explosions as a rule. The violence fiend can be killed by violent acts, Denji can be cut down despite Chainsaw's purpose literally being to cut things, and we see the sword devil quite literally get cut down by someone wielding a sword. Nothing in the entirety of the Chainsaw Man mythos even begins to imply that Reze is this beyond bomb level threat. I mean, for Christ's sake, she doesn't even embody nuclear explosions or bombs because Chainsaw Man ate the concept and she's still there. So you can't even make the argument that in story she embodies all bombs ever. Funnier still, Even if she did have resistance to bombs wholesale, Bakugo's quirk isn't centered around bombs, it's about explosions. And obviously there's some level of specificity to devil creation in the Chainsaw Man universe because the violence and war devil can both exist, despite war being a natural byproduct of violence. Therefore, this alleged immunity to bombs wouldn't apply to the howitzer impact hitting her like a damn meteor. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what camp you're in, Bakugo is stronger, faster, more durable, probably more skilled, definitely smarter, and overall the character that is going to send her back to the Soviet Union in a trash bag. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more Chainsaw Man battles coming to the channel, and also consider not sniping off my head for the outcome of this fight. The agenda was and has been very fun, and I'm happy to have been able to throw my hat into the ring for this historic moment in the community. In any case, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.